Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video I'll be talking about my lupus. I did mention it in a few of my videos before, the first one and the second one. I did mention that I would be making a video of me talking about my experiences, all my symptoms and everything that I went through as is in the first year and what I've been through periodically throughout up until now. So pretty much my symptoms started in late July. I remember we came back from a trip to Mexico, and I remember when I returned back to work, I started feeling just really tired. I didn't want to do much. I just wanted to stay in bed and sleep in. I also started getting like body aches. Kind of felt like if I was getting a cold, so I kind of figured, me and my family kind of figured that I had caught like a virus or something back in Mexico, or just the weather change or something. And we were like, oh, I'm probably gonna get sick or whatever. So I just brushed it off. But then as the days went on, I started still feeling super tired. I barely even could get out of bed. I also started feeling a lot of pain in my joints, my bones, like my body just continuously hurt every single day. And then I also started noticing like my face started breaking out in like a light little rash. But the rash, I kind of figured, oh, it's probably my makeup or an allergic reaction to something. Nothing really important. So I left it as that. And then during this time, my hair was like a little bit past my shoulder. And I remember earlier that year, I had gotten my hair permed to curly just because I was sick and tired of having straight hair, and I always wanted curly hair. And my perm had just started to relax a little bit more. So my hair was like this really, really pretty wavy texture to it. So I remember every time I went into the shower, washed my hair, when I would rinse it out, I started noticing like not chunks of hair, but it was just more than the ordinary fallout of hair. So I remember telling my parents like, hey, my hair is falling out, this and that. And they're like, oh, you probably just need vitamins. It's probably stress from work. So that happened. I went to the hospital once because I couldn't stop complaining about my body aches. And so I went in, the doctors ran all these lab works and everything. They're like, oh no, you're fine. It's probably just a virus. Since you did just travel out of the country, you probably caught something. You have to let it run its course, whatever. We'll just give you antibiotics and whatnot. So I was like, okay. So like I said, we didn't give it much importance. Around August, went to my family doctor because my mom started noticing that I wasn't eating much and that I honestly didn't leave my room much. So she was like, what's going on? Maybe you need vitamins or some sort of help to your body. So I remember she took me and she explained to the doctor I had lost already about 15 pounds at that time, and this was only probably like a month in. And so I got labs again. My mom had already told her that I'd been into the hospital, and she requested those lab works and everything. But she ran her own and she's like, no, everything's fine. Her vitamin D is low. Her white blood cell count is low. She's like, but it's probably the antibiotics she was given and such. So that was that. All right, now me going back to work, it was just dreadful to me. Like, I did not want to go to work. I just felt so tired all the time. Like, I didn't really care about my job at that time. But I did notice at that time, I started going through depression at that time. I didn't know why. I kind of figured it was just the whole responsibility of my job and having to deal with all these people and all these responsibilities on my own. So I was just like, it's probably that. I just have a lot going on. And so on top of that, I had to worry about my hair thinning out, falling out. I remember driving home and just feeling like I felt worthless. Like I I kept telling myself, like, why am I here? Like, they were just like these little voices in my head. And I was just like, what the heck? Like, I had never gone through that. I'd never thought about anything like that. And so I was like, just shake it off. Like, just, you know, get over it, move on. Everything's fine. It's just stress and whatnot. Days went by. My brother started noticing that I just get home. I'd sometimes bring home like McDonald's or something for us to eat since my parents were still at work. And so he would eat his, and I usually order like 2 McChickens and some chicken nuggets. And I would probably just eat like 5 chicken nuggets and leave the rest. Like, I wouldn't even eat my food. So after that, I'd shower and go straight to bed. Like, I'd get home around 7 and I was in bed by 8. So when my parents got home, they would ask my brother, they were like, where's your sister? Like, oh, she's in bed, you know, she got home and went straight to bed. And they were like, okay. So I'd just wake up for like 5 minutes just to let them know that, hey, I'm okay and whatnot. And then I'd go back to bed. My mom started noticing more weight loss. My hair started falling out even more. The rash on my face got even worse. So at this point, she was so overwhelmed. Like, she was more worried than at the beginning because she knew it wasn't a virus. She knew something was wrong. So they took me to the hospital around 2 more times, each time being at a different hospital, just because the first one, they ran labs and everything, and they said, no, it's fine. She's probably got a virus, but we can't really tell because it just has to run its course. We can't give her any medications. So they took me to a different hospital. At this hospital, they drew, like, I think it's like a little glass bottle about this big, and they drew blood. And I remember being so freaked out just because I knew I had already had so much blood drawn within the last month. And I was like, okay, this is just too much. But the doctor was like, okay, we're going to do some bacterial test or whatever. But we have to wait a few days for those to come back. But we'll give you a call if something, you know, abnormal is going on. So they sent me home back within the few days, and they were like, there's nothing wrong with you. You know, it's probably just like we said, a virus, and you just have to let it run its course. And my mom was like, okay, this is like the 3rd time to tell us it's a virus. It's been more than a month. I think it has already ran its course. So this can't be a virus. So my mom was already super stressed out, super freaked out, just because she would just see me in bed. And at this point, it was already late August. I had to quit my job because I could barely get out of bed. Like, it was painful for me at times. But they understood, and they were like, okay, you know, if I wanted to go back once I was better, then I could return. So my mom would just, when she would leave work, she would leave me in bed. And she'd come home and she'd find me right where she left me. And she would worry so much. She's like, I feel like I'm losing you. She's like, because they can't tell me what's going on. They can't give me answers. They can't give you medications. Like, it keeps getting worse rather than better. And so I remember one day she called into work and she's like, we're going to your doctor and we're going to try and get answers. She's like, because this is just insane. This is too much. We got to the office, and I remember there was like 5 people in the waiting area, and my mom went in first. I dragged along behind her, and she started telling the girl, she's like, I need answers. She's like, my daughter's getting worse. I've taken her to like 2 or 3 hospitals already, and they can't tell me anything. They keep drawing blood, and she keeps getting weaker. Her hair's falling out. And so she just started crying. She started bawling her eyes out in the main lobby. And one of the girls behind the desk, she's like, okay, calm down. She's like, I'm going to put you guys in a waiting room and have the doctor come out and talk to you guys to see what she says or what she wants to do. So we were in there. We waited for about 10 minutes, and then my doctor comes in. Was like, okay, so I got results from your last visit to the hospital. She's like, but they couldn't tell me anything either. She's like, what I'm going to go ahead and do, there's a different doctor. There was a different doctor at the ER. And she's like, I'm going to go ahead and refer you into the emergency room. That way you don't have to wait or anything. And when they're going to go ahead and do all these these exams and everything, but she was going to send in all the information she already had. And so we got there immediately. We went in, and the hospital at this time was under renovation, so they didn't have enough room, so they had like the hospital beds lined up in the hallways. And so the nurse was like, I'm sorry, I have to, you guys have to wait like this, but I just have to sit you here and just wait till it's your turn for the doctor to see. I kid you not, we were there for about 7 hours before the doctor even came to talk to us. And he told us, he's like, okay, I looked at all your lab work. I looked at everything the other hospitals did. And he's like, the only similarities I could find is that your white blood cell count is super low. And there were other things, but I can't remember exactly what they're called. He's like, my only thing I can really say, which he didn't know if he was certain, he's like, but the only idea I can get is that you have lupus. And I was like, lupus? And I only knew about lupus because my mom had told me that her sister had passed away because of lupus shortly after she gave birth to my cousin. And I also knew about lupus because one of my aunts, one of her other sisters, has lupus, but it's on the skin, so she can't really be out in sunlight for much, but it's treatable. She gets steroid injections. I think it's every month or every 2 months. I don't know how it works for her, but that's the only reason why I was familiar with lupus. I didn't know what it was, but I know I've heard about it before. So he asked us, he was like, do you guys know if the lupus runs in the family? And at this point, my mom, I guess she kind of freaked out just hearing the word lupus because she remembered about my aunt. And she told her, no, this is the first time we hear about it. And so I just looked at her like, okay, kind of confused. But he was like, okay, well, I just want to refer you guys to a specialist so that he can give a more thorough, evaluation and give you guys more answers to your questions. It's like, it's the only thing we can really do right now. So we left the hospital. We made an appointment with that doctor. This was already in September. We made the appointment. They had like different doctors, but he referred me to one special one. He did his physical evaluation, which pretty much just grabbing your joints and checking your lymph nodes and everything. And of course they were inflamed. And he's like, okay, it's clear that your lupus is active. He's like, but I want to run more lab exams other than the ones that they've already done so that I can get more of an idea of how bad this flare-up is. I was like, okay. So I had to make another appointment just to get lab work done. And a few days later, I went back and I was waiting. There were like 2 people in front of me and they went in. But while we were waiting, another girl came in, and pretty much it was my turn to go in, and they called her instead of me. And pretty much it took them a good while for them to call my name. And one of the ladies that was there actually made a smart remark. And she said it in English. She's like, it's okay, they can wait. They're like, they can wait because she's priority. She was one of the doctor's daughters. And I was like, okay. And I guess she thought we didn't speak English because she looked straight at us when she made the remark. And I was like, okay. A while later, they called me back, and the lady that made the smart remark was actually the nurse that was drawing my blood. She was asking me questions kind of like in a, oh, I hope she understands me kind of attitude. And when she heard me respond to her like in clear English, she was like taken aback. And I was like, yeah, I kind of understood everything you said, that's what I thought. So she drew my blood and I just like, whatever. So the next time I went back to my follow-up appointment, I made the complaint about that, but they didn't do anything about it. So my mom wasn't even happy with the way the doctor was treating us. It was just, they had so many patients that they couldn't even dedicate the time to focus on the patient that he had. Like, it was ridiculous. So pretty much he told me, yeah, like, yeah, you do have lupus. It is on an active flare-up. And he gave me medications for it. He's like, I'm gonna start you on this treatment, and you're gonna take this treatment for about a month, and then we'll see you again to see where you're at. Okay, so we left, and the few weeks passed by, and I was getting worse. My legs were starting to swell up. I had anxiety through the roof. Like, I couldn't even sleep at night. And so I remember my mom was like, you know what, I'm gonna get a second opinion. I need to see a different doctor. And she had actually called the office to see if I could see a different doctor in that same office, but they made it this huge deal about getting or moving me to a different doctor. So my mom just went back to my regular doctor's office and told her what was going on. And she was like, okay. She's like, I'm gonna give you a list of doctors that are in the Irving area so that you guys can choose one that you guys want to go to. So I looked at the list, went through reviews, and I found a doctor, and I made an appointment with her, and they saw me right away. And she didn't even have to run lab work. She looked at all the paperwork that I brought to her, which was a big folder by now. And she was like, okay. He's like, yeah, you do have lupus. It is on an active flare-up. The treatment that you're on is fine. She was like, but I want you to see a nephrologist, because with lupus, it does affect your other organs, especially your kidney. So I made an appointment with a nephrologist, and she had told me, she's like, okay, yeah, your kidney is leaking a lot of protein. So we have to start you on another, or add on to these medications that you're already taking, just so that we can help your kidney. So she started me on these Lasix, which is to get rid of all the retained water in your body. And so I was taking my medication for my lupus and aside, stuff for my kidney. And she's like, if it doesn't get any better, we're gonna have to do a kidney biopsy. So it kind of scared me, but since she said, we'll just wait and see how your kidney responds. We ended up, we went through November, December. My kidney seemed to be doing a little better, but not as good as they'd wanted it to be. In December, I had already started working where my mom works. I had started working with her because she wanted to keep an eye on me. So I was able to get a job there. And I remember in January, work was slow. So they would give us permission to, take some time off, up to 2 weeks. So I remember my mom was like, okay, I want to go to Mexico just to get another opinion. She's like, I just want to be sure, just because she had told my story to different people she met, and they kept telling her like, okay, it might not be lupus, it might be this. She's like, but in Mexico, there are really, really good doctors, they'll give you a certain answer. We took some time off work and we went to Mexico. And on my trip there, I noticed my legs swole up a lot. And so like my jeans, you could see the marking of my jeans. And I was always cold. Like my feet would not warm up at all. And yeah, it was cold at this time in Mexico, but it was, when you were out in the sun, it was warm. And even when I was in the sun, I was still freezing. So I remember we went there on a weekend, and my aunt and cousin had an appointment set up for me already with one of the really good specialists in Mexico. And I went to my appointment, and he's like, okay. He's like, I have all these lab works that you've brought to me. They're fine. I can work with these, but I need to run my own as well. So that same day, I went to go get lab work done, but they wouldn't give me my results till Monday when the office opened again. And so Monday, when I went back to the doctor, he told me, he's like, okay. He's like, you definitely do have a lupus. There's no doubt about it. He's like, the treatment that your doctors have put you on is really, really good. But you do need to go back to Dallas right away. He's like, because I need your doctor to admit you into the hospital and start you on this treatment because your kidney right now is doing so bad. It's pretty much failing you right now. And so it kind of freaked me out. And I was like, okay, if my kidney fails, what's gonna happen? So we book our bus tickets to go back to Dallas that same night. So we leave that same night, get there on Tuesday morning, and we get home. I mean, my dad was already waiting for us at the bus station, so we get home, I shower, and I have all my paperwork that the doctor has given me. And I called my doctor that I was seeing here in Dallas, and I told her what was going on, and she's like, okay, I need you to come in right now. She's like, just let them know you don't have an appointment, but I need to see you now. So I go there, and yeah, I told her everything that happened, and she was like, why were you in Mexico? And I was like, oh, I had an emergency that I needed to attend to. But, you know, I told her that I'd seen a doctor over there, and he'd given me all these things that he wanted done to me. And she was like, okay, this is actually, you know, good treatment, but I'm going to go ahead and admit you and get you set up for a kidney biopsy because we need to see how severe your kidney has been already damaged. So I'm admitted into the hospital, and the next day I wasn't put into a room right away because they were so busy. And then with the renovations and everything, they didn't have a lot of rooms available. So that night, the first night, I'd stay in the ER. The next day, I was scheduled for a kidney biopsy. My parents weren't there with me at that time because they were trying to get everything resolved with work so that they could have some time off and be with me. So I remember the guy or the nurse was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and take you back to your kidney biopsy if you want to text your parents or if you want to tell them that, you know, they can be in the room or they can wait for you in the room when they come back. So I did that, and they took me back to this room where they do all the kidney biopsies. And the lady was like, okay, we're just going to do some local anesthesia right there on the area where you're gonna get the needle put through. When I say a needle, it's not a tiny needle, it's a long needle. And she showed it to me, and I was like, okay. She's like, but it's not gonna hurt, it's just gonna feel like a little pinch. And she was like, when I tell you not to breathe, don't breathe. She's like, but then you can breathe when I tell you to breathe, because any little movement that I would make could actually make it to where they punctured another organ of mine. She's like, so it's really important that you follow what I tell you. So at this point, I was already freaked out. I was like, okay, you know, something, I could bleed to death from the inside, you know, I don't know what's gonna happen. But it was literally done right away. Like, it took them probably like 2 to 5 minutes to do. And she was like, okay, we're done. And she even showed me a little piece of kidney that they took out, which wasn't so bad. So when I got back to my room, my parents were already there. And they were like, how was it? And I told them, like, it wasn't so bad. You know, it was worse in my head than what the actual procedure was. A few hours later, they told me, okay, we have a room for you, so we're going to go ahead and put you into this other room. I was like, okay. So I was put into my room. The next day, my nephrologist comes in. And she's like, okay, so we got the results back from your biopsy. And my kidney, there's 4 stages as for kidney, or how bad your kidney is damaged. 4 being that you pretty much have to go into dialysis. There's no repair, no medications to help that kidney anymore. So you have to go straight to dialysis. And she had told me, she's like, your kidney was on the verge of stage 4. She's like, if you would have waited any longer to get this biopsy done, she's like, you could have already been on dialysis with how bad your kidney has been doing. And I knew about dialysis because I had an aunt who was going through dialysis at the time. And so I knew how painful it was for her. I knew how just time consuming that was. You know, it wasn't just once a week. She was going at least 2 to 3 times a week. So I knew when I heard dialysis, I was like, oh my goodness. So she told me, she's like, I'm going to start you on some treatment while you're in the hospital. You're going to be in here for about 3 more days. She's like, until they're done with treatment. And after that, you're going to continue your lupus treatment, since it seemed to be doing well, because the lab works that my rheumatologist was getting, she was seeing improvement. So she's like, we're just going to take care of your kidney so that it helps out, you know, with your lupus and all. So I was there in there for about a week. And so I was able to go home. And at this time, my hair had already fallen out about 70%. And I remember I had already cut it before this. I had cut it into a small little bob. I was like, okay, this is too much, you know. So when it was time for me to go back to work, I didn't really want to go back to work because my hair had gotten worse from when I left. And so my mom ended up buying me a wig so that I could wear it to work and not have to worry about it. So that was that. And my lupus did improve. I actually did get better. My body aches were less and less every day. My rash on my face had gone. My appetite was back. And I wasn't feeling so tired anymore. Like, I actually had energy to get up and do things. That ended and everything was back to normal. Okay, so I was fine for a while. It was up until, I think, 2016 that my doctor noticed that my body was becoming immune to the treatment I was taking for my lupus. She's like, it's not, your lupus seems to be wanting to flare up. She's like, because the medication doesn't want, or is not taking effect anymore. So she started me on new infusions. For these infusions, I had to get like a special shot to protect my ovaries, just because she was like, you're young and I know that in the future you're going to want to have a family and everything. She's like, so I want to protect your ovaries before I start this infusion, because it's known to damage your ovary, or a woman's ovaries. So I went through 6 months of that, and it worked. My doctor was surprised with the results. I remember her telling me, she's like, it's like if you never had a lupus, like if you never had a really, really bad flare-up, which surprised her, because as to how bad my kidney had been doing, she was like, you're doing great. So I was happy. I was, you know, focusing on work, and I had actually enrolled to go back to school. I remember it was end of 2017, around November. Yeah, it was around Thanksgiving, when I started noticing, when I'd go out with my friends, since it was a really bad winter that year, I would come home and I would immediately get a fever once I got home. And I was like, what the heck? But my mom was like, you're probably gonna catch a cold. She's like, you probably didn't wear a big enough jacket. And so we just left it at that. And we started noticing that my fevers seemed to get worse and worse. They would start out like 101, and I remember it going up to 107 almost. And my mom would take me to the hospital, and they were like, oh, it's probably just a virus, or, you know, there is a lot of flu viruses going around. And they would run the flu test, and they all came back negative. And then it wasn't until like the third time when we went that the doctor that was on call, or that was there, he noticed that I had actually been there because of lupus in the past. So he was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and let your rheumatologist know, run some tests, and see what we do from there. Sure enough, he came back to tell me, he's like, your lupus is flaring up. Your fevers are due to your lupus. And that's when I started noticing my hair had started to fall out again. My hair was slowly, little by little, thinning out here at the top and towards this side. And that's when I started noticing that I had like a darker rash going through like the side of my face. and just 3 other little spots on my face. And the rash actually seemed to spread to my scalp. And I remember it was heavier on this side. So my hair started falling out more aggressively on this side than it did on this side. So I had my hair up to here already, which it had already grown back from the first time it fell out. And so I would wear extensions, which they're these currently. I would wear extensions just to make my hair feel longer. And at that time, since my hair was thinning out, you know, I would go out and everything, and I was like, my hair looks so thin. So I'd clip in my extensions, and my mom would help me hide it and, you know, fix my hair to where you couldn't see the extension, just because my hair was so thin at that time. And I think it was beginning of January, my rheumatologist told me, she's like, we're gonna go ahead and start another round of the infusions. So I think we were down to our 3rd infusion. It was already in March when she was like, okay, the infusions aren't working. We would have already seen results by now, like as we did the first time around. She's like, I'm gonna go ahead and have to start you on this new treatment that had been going around for lupus patients. And she's like, it's called Rituxan. She's like, it's a low dose of chemo, and pretty much they would have to admit me into the hospital. I had to be there a whole day, up to 2 days, because the infusion itself took about 8 hours just to be done. And she was like, I'll just have to monitor you to make sure you don't have any, you know, any allergic reactions or just secondary reactions to the medication. So right away, within the week, she called me and she's like, okay, I'm going to admit you to the hospital for these reasons. So if they ask you, just let them know it's for this reason, which was high blood pressure and that my body was retaining liquids again. And my doctor just wanted me under, monitor me. So yeah, I went into the hospital. First infusion, they didn't do it that same day. They did it like a day or 2 after, because they needed to get all their approvals from insurance and everything for my infusion. And so they did it, and they started around 2, or no, around 3 or 4 actually. And I remember my mom was at work, and I called her to tell her, because she told me, she's like, whenever they start your infusion, call me and see if I can leave work. I called her, she left work, she was there. When she got there, they were just starting it, like they were starting to put the IV into my arm. And yeah, I started around 3 or 4, and I didn't get done till like midnight. And so I remember my doctor had told me, she's like, as soon as it's done, you can go home. And so I told the nurse, I was like, am I gonna be able to go home? And she's like, no. She's like, you'll probably get to go home tomorrow early morning. So I did that, and after that infusion, I went back to work. My doctor was like, okay, I'm gonna have to do a 2nd infusion, same procedure, you know, we're gonna admit you into the hospital and, you know, have it done there. I was like, okay, so we did the same thing, admitted into the hospital. This doctor that was on duty at that time, she wanted me to be there for 4 days. And I was like, no. I was like, I already had this done, and my doctor told me as soon as it's done, I can go home. And so yeah, that happened, and I went back to work, and this was already, I want to say September was my last infusion that I had of Rituxan. And I was doing way better. Like, my doctor saw improvement. She's like, okay, it doesn't take full effect until 3 months. She's like, so I'll monitor you within those 3 months. So yeah, everything was fine. You know, my kidney was still leaking protein, but my nephrologist, she was giving me different medications and different things to follow as to help my kidney. I think it was in February. I was doing fine, like beginning of January, like everything was perfect. And then February is when I started feeling my tiredness again, my fatigue and just pain. My legs were still swelling, my blood pressure was high. And my doctor was like, okay, your effect to your medication is wearing out. She's like, so we're gonna have to do another round of Rituxan. She's like, just 1 round, but we'll split it up into 2. so that I wouldn't have to be in for so long. She's like, but we'll do it. We were going to do it in her office. And so we did it. She actually took me out of work in March, and up to this day I have not gone back. I had my last infusion about a month ago. It was about a month ago that I had my last infusion. So far I've been doing good. This last flare-up that I had, the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, my hair did fall out 90% of it. You could actually see my scalp, and it was worse, like I said, on this side than on this side. So at that point I did have to wear a wig right away. Before it actually all fell out, my mom had already bought me one. And so I started wearing that, and my hair didn't start growing back. I didn't start seeing change until no, not July. July I already had hair. Probably around May. April, May, I started noticing my hair wasn't falling out anymore, and my scalp wasn't so shiny. It wasn't so bald anymore. But I started to wear my wigs. And in December of last year is when I decided that I didn't want to wear wigs to work anymore. So my mom took me to my stylist, and she trimmed my hair, made it into this like really short pixie cut. But it looked even, like everything looked fine. It looked like people at work didn't know I was wearing a wig. So they just thought I cut off my hair, and, you know, like, oh, why did you cut your hair? Kind of similar to what had happened the first time when I had my wig, when my hair fell out, because I was already at that job. So one day when they saw me not wearing a wig and had short hair, they're like, why did you cut your hair? So I luckily have a great, you know, ways to hide the fact that I'm wearing a wig. But occasionally I'd wear, you know, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'm wearing a wig. They're like, what happened to your short hair? I was like, oh, I'm wearing, you know, I cut it so I could wear wigs. And so, yeah, now my hair, from December, it has grown so much. I actually have it pulled back, but this is like the longest part at the top. But my hair is like right here. And this is still short, so when I wear it, I just do like these little twisty braids and pin it back. But I am able to wear my extensions again, which I'm so happy about it, because I love long hair. Like, I miss my long hair, and I just can't wait till it grows back. But just with lupus itself, it's hard. When you tell them that you have a lupus, they're like, oh, you know, they don't really pay attention as to what the person is going through. They don't pay attention as to what they're feeling. And if you tell them like, oh, I can't, you know, my body hurts, they just think of you as lazy. It's like, I'm not lazy. It's just my body is really hating me right now. And so, lupus, I think the hardest thing for me through this whole thing is having to go through depression and anxiety. The very first flare before I knew what I was dealing with, I remember I had told my brother once, when I was going through my little depression episodes, I remember I came home one day and I told my brother, I was like, what would you do if I didn't come home one day? What would you do if I wasn't here anymore? And he would just look at me like, what are you talking about? And he's like, what do you mean? And he was like, I want to say like 15, a little smaller than 15, if anything. So he was just like, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. He's like, I was like, what if I wasn't here anymore? I was like, what if I just died one day? And that kind of was like, are you crazy? He's like, what are you even saying? So I was like, just forget it. So I guess he mentioned it to my parents, and I remember we were at the dining room table. They were trying to talk to me and whatnot, and Mom was like, your brother told us something. And I was like, did he tell you, you know, what I had just said? And she's like, yeah. She's like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know what's going on. I started crying. I was like, I've been wanting to tell you guys for a long time. I was like, but I just don't feel like I want to be here anymore. Like, I don't want to go through this anymore. This is too painful for me. When I I was still at the other job. She's like, when I come home, I just want to drive my truck off the cliff. I just want to crash it into a wall. You know, I don't want to be here no more. And she started crying. And pretty much from there on, they started keeping an eye on me. And they told my doctors and they put me on antidepressants. But I stopped taking them because I didn't want to become addicted to them. And so I did manage to get through that. I had the support of my parents and my brother to help me through all of that. And now my last time, this last bad flare-up I had with that, my doctor had started me on my infusions that I was only doing for 3 months. I don't know, I guess it was the nausea medicine they were giving me. I started getting really bad anxiety with it. And I remember one day I called my mom. I just came home from an infusion and I dropped them off at work. They were like, are you good enough to drive? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. So I drove myself home. And on my way home, since I was alone, I got this like really bad feeling of anxiety and just like panic. And I remember driving home and I was freaking out because I felt like the lanes were so small and I just started freaking out. But I managed to make it home. And the moment I made it home, I started crying. I started like panicking, having this really bad anxiety. I didn't know what to do. And my brother wasn't going to be home until another 2 hours from school. And I was just freaking out. So I remember I called my mom's extension at work, but she wasn't at her place. So I called my friend at work. She works in the office. So I was like, hey, I'm trying to reach my mom. I have something I really need to tell her. I was like, can you try and tell her to call me? She's like, yeah, I'm going to go find her. I'm going to page her and have her call you right back. So yeah, not even 5 minutes, my phone rings and it's my mom. And she's like, what's going on? And I started crying. I was like, I don't know what's going on. I feel so scared. Like I have this really bad anxiety. I don't know what to do. I already tried to do what my doctor told me to do. I was like, it's not working. I just want someone here to hold me. I feel so alone. And she was like, okay. She's like, I'm going to figure out how to get home because at this time we only had one car. So I had dropped them off and the car was here with me. And she's like, don't worry about it. I'm going to be home here in a few, I'll give you a call when I'm almost there. She's like, but just take a shower, keep yourself busy. And I'll call you here in a few minutes when I leave. So one of the ladies at work she heard what was going on and she told my mom, take my car. She's like, I don't leave until another few hours. She's like, take my car. And, as long as you're here before, she's like, yeah, I'll be back. She's like, I'm just going to go get my daughter and take her to the hospital or to her doctor. So my mom calls me and I was already in the shower and she's like, how are you? She's like, just stay on the phone with me. She's like, I'll be there, before you know it. And so she had told me, text your brother to take the bus. Don't pick him up. So I text my brother and I was like, hey, come home in the bus. We'll wait for you here. We have to go back to Irving. But we didn't really tell him much. And then I remember I was in the living room, just sitting on the couch, just shaking my foot and just like shaking and everything, just in full mode panic. And my mom didn't call me. She just came in through the door and she opened the door. She looked for me. She called out for me. She's like, where are you? And I was like, I'm right here. And she just ran to me. And I remember I told her how I was feeling. And I told her, just hold me. I was like, just hold me because that's all I want right now. And it was so scary because being alone, one with depression and then another with anxiety, is one of the worst things ever. And depression alone is bad and anxiety alone is bad. So putting both together, and now that I talk about it, it's like I don't even know how I got through all of that. how I even made it on my own, being home alone for, you know, even if it was 2 or 3 hours. It was horrible because you get all these ideas in your head and all these voices in your head, and you're just like, what the heck? But yeah, she took me to my doctor and she prescribed me these anxiety pills. She's like, every time you feel an anxiety attack or a panic attack coming, just take one, and they pretty much knock you out. Like they relax you, but they make you go feel sleepy and for you to go to sleep. So after that little incident, my mom would call me every hour on every one of her breaks, just to make sure I was fine, and she would have my brother keep an eye on me. Keep in mind, my brother is 8 years younger than me, so she would have my little brother keep an eye on me. But it's not easy. If you know someone who has lupus, you know, be a little understanding as to when they tell you that they don't feel good or they're just not in the mood, you know. Just keep an eye on them, because you never know what they're going through. And I know there are people who might watch this video that are barely being diagnosed with lupus or going through a flare-up, you know, or just want someone to talk to about lupus. You guys can always message me through Instagram, Snapchat, whatever you guys feel comfortable with, commenting down below. I will gladly, you know, talk to you guys. You know, if you guys need advice or anything, you know, you guys can contact me, and just, I'll be there for you guys, because if there was one thing that I wish I had was someone to talk to. Someone besides my doctors and my parents. Someone who was going through lupus or had been through something that I'd been through, just to get their advice and what they thought, you know, would help. I honestly hope you guys, you know, got something out of this video. And like I said, if you're going through lupus or know someone who's going through lupus, be there for them, be there for yourself. Just know that things do get better. It may feel like your storm is never ending, but there is a rainbow at the end of that storm. And just stay strong. Talk to someone if you're going through depression or anxiety. It's not easy, but there is help, and talking to someone does help. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It is a long video. But don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification button. And also feel free to follow me on all of my social media platforms, which is just Instagram and Snapchat. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy it, like I said. And if anything, comment down below on what you guys would like to see on this channel. I'm currently still trying to work on makeup looks, because I would like to use my other camera, my Canon camera, but I have to figure out how to put it on my hard drive and work from my hard drive and just edit on my laptop. I don't know. I have to figure out. It's a whole progress. But I'll see you guys in my next video.